Is Rajesh Chandwani, and from bottom of my heart I welcome all of you to this institute for this conference ICTDX. We have Professor Tathagata Bandyopadhyay who will tell you about some of the work, pioneering work which IIM Ahmedabad has done in this field, and we will have Neha who will tell you about the conference papers and conference presentations, etc. But let me tell you that you have come to a nice place at the right time. The weather is nice, and we have also provided you a book, 101 Ways to Enjoy Ahmedabad. So read that and at least make use of some of those ways to enjoy Ahmedabad. IIM Ahmedabad, beautiful campus, weather is nice, you can enjoy the weather and the campus. Take time off the conference to enjoy the city also. So that is my request to you, and with this I call Professor Tathagata Bandyopadhyay to welcome all of you officially to the institute.
So, distinguished guests, participants, students, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to welcome you to the 10th International Conference on Information and Communication Technologies and Development at IIM Ahmedabad. So this year's conference, I am told, focuses on addressing the gaps between the researchers and the practitioners by bringing them on a common platform. I believe that the discussions that will take place during the course of next 3 or 4 days will help bridging the gap if there exists any. So before I close, I would like to say a few words about the contributions made by our past and current faculty members to this particular space. IIM Ahmedabad started working in the space of ICT and development in the early 80s, led by Professor Subhash Bhatnagar, who contributed immensely to this field. And currently we have at least 10 faculty members who are involved in this particular domain, and they are working on issues related to health, related to education, related to governance, as well as agricultural issues. We have several centers: Center for Management of Health Services, which actually is now headed by Rajesh, Idea Telecom Center of Excellence, headed by one of our faculty members, Professor Rekha Jain. These centers are instrumental in driving research in this particular space by taking up national and international projects related to different issues. Also, we have a Center for Innovation, Incubation and Entrepreneurship, which helps incubating any innovative idea. It could be in any space, and taking that idea to the stage of implementation through rigorous testing. So I will keep my talk brief, but I would like to close my talk with a technology-based frugal innovation, and I was partly involved in it as a data analyst, as a statistician. So this was incubated in IIMA around in 2000, 2002. And the person, I don't know how many of you know his name, Brij Kothari. He is a big name in social entrepreneurship. And how many of you, I don't know, have heard about his idea, what is called same language subtitling. And this is a very simple idea. The idea was this, that around 400 million school children and neo-literates, they don't get a reading practice. So what we can do, we have different song programs in Doordarshan. So if we subtitle these songs, the lyrics of these songs, in the same language, then possibly those who are early readers, they will have a tendency to read, as well as when they are hearing the songs, they will have a tendency to read, and that gives them a practice, reading practice. And it was actually, there were 3 surveys that was conducted by Nielsen, S.C. Nielsen, one in 2002, another in 2003, another in 2007, across 14,000 households in 5 states of India to see the efficacy of same language subtitling. And there I came as a statistician to help him to analyze the data, and it was proven beyond doubt that this particular innovation can help enhancing the reading ability of the neo-literates or early readers, and the cost is, for 5,000 readers, the cost is only $1. So that's why it's a frugal innovation. And I would like to show you a clipping about this. It is of a very short clipping. So can you just
Planet Read, along with the Indian Institute of Management and a number of other partners, commit to helping 150 million young people become fluent readers by using same language subtitling on popular television programs. Now, this is a very interesting thing. It never would occur to me. It's amazing how many non-literate people do watch television. And according to the World Bank, according to Nielsen, who put this question in their ratings scan, same language subtitling doubles the number of functional readers among primary school children. A small thing that has a staggering impact on people's lives. So this is a great commitment, and I thank them all for working together. Let's give them a hand.
So this gives you an idea about the impact of this very, very simple innovation supported by research, rigorous research. And I hope you will enjoy your 3-day stay on our campus. And I wish a success to this particular conference. Thank you very much.
So I would request Professor Tathagata Bandyopadhyay, Professor Pushpendra, Professor Rajesh, Professor Neha, and Professor Kentaro to come and light the lamp of the knowledge as a symbolic way of bridging the gap between the practitioners and academicians.
मैडम ने एक मिनट ऊपर प्लान पूछी मैडम
Hello everyone, I am Pushpendra Singh, Associate Professor IIIT Delhi and General Co-Chair for ICTDX. Once again, warm welcome to the conference. This year we have 244 participants from 21 countries representing 113 different organizations. We are a good mix of researchers, entrepreneurs, social workers working in the area of ICT and development. And please enjoy the conference, and I would like to invite our program chair Neha to throw some more light on ICTD of this year and ICTD of previous years. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Just a quick introduction to what we have in store for you over the next 3 days. Oh, wrong mic. You could say.
Slide change करने के लिए.
नहीं change करना. It's great to see you all here. Thank you for taking the time, the money, the effort to make it to this conference. I'm Neha Kumar. I'm an assistant professor at Georgia Tech. ICTD is a major part of my life, what I do for a living. And I just want to say that I'm really, truly glad that a lot of you are here, despite last-minute flight delays, visa approvals, all of that. For those of you who are in India for the first time, I want to welcome you to our country. We'll be doing our best to make you feel right at home, and we promise you cows and cricket and horns and rickshaws, and never a dull moment. And it's also what we hope our conference will offer, not a dull moment. There are 3 things I want to go over very quickly while I'm here talking to you. First, we're at ICTD 10, and as we go into double digits, we decided to revisit our older conferences and recognize some of the work that was celebrated and is seen to have stood the test of time, as well as other work that fell out of citation early and perhaps sooner than it should have. Second, I'd like to give you a snapshot of the discussions that we had and the decisions that we made to organize the conference this year, concluding with the program at a glance. The ICTD conference, in its 13 years of existence so far, so since 2006, has been bringing together a community of scholars and practitioners studying and/or introducing technology initiatives to target multiple different realms of global development. In this 10th edition, our goals are no different. For those of you attending for the first time, ICTD aims to embrace different epistemological leanings and approaches to critiquing and promoting technology-based development efforts. For those of you attending for the 2nd, 3rd, or 10th time, we've put together a slideshow of photos from prior years for you to enjoy during our breaks starting tomorrow and get caught up. This is in the hope that you will be reminded pleasantly of how much our community has evolved over time and also things that haven't changed. The first conference took place in 2006, and there was a strong focus on establishing that ICTs had a role to play in disparate domains, and these are some of the papers that were published in that realm. So the domains range from agricultural extension to rural supply chains, the fishing industry, livestock, and governance. ICTs were much less affordable then, and so a large component of this research involved different ways of working with and around expensive ICTs, also focusing on the challenges that limited literacies imposed. This is the time when there was a lot of research around kiosks, so rural kiosks. There was also some meta work comparing across developed and developing contexts and talking about the importance of human-driven design in ICTD. Now, time for some ICTD trivia, and we're going to do this through the conference, and we'll see some of it might be a little bit easier than others. So with the 4 images that you see on the screen, for those of you who have attended prior conferences, can you map, so the easy question is, can you map these images to ICTD projects? And then the harder question is, which one of them is not like the others? Any takers? Just call out whatever projects you can map. Yes, so text-free user interfaces, that's the first one, correct. Multiple mice. Yes, and the last one is Rural Kiosk, which is same language subtitling, exactly. We just heard about the project. Awesome. So all of these 4 projects were presented at this conference. Which one of these is not like the others? This is the harder question to answer. The third one, why? He doesn't have a computer. Well, that is correct. But that was actually the keynote. So Brij Kothari gave the first keynote at ICTD 2006. So it wasn't really a paper that was presented like the other 3. Anyway, so this is kind of a short reminder of what we saw in 2006, and we'll do the same for the other years. So I'm quickly going to go through these slides for now, but we'll talk about it in the plenary sessions tomorrow and day after. Okay, so what is different, what's new this year? So we continue the focus on crossing bridges across countries, disciplines, and approaches. But an additional focus for us this year was in identifying ways in which we could be more inclusive and foster stronger, deeper, and richer ties with those who have aligned interests. So for the first time, we had practice chairs to try and ensure participation from a good mix of researchers and practitioners. These were Neil Patel and Rikin Gandhi. Is Neil here? So Rikin, I think, is joining us tomorrow. And they've been part of the ICTD community since the beginnings of this conference. We also held our very first doctoral consortium this year for the PhD students in our community, and we had 22 students participate. And this we saw as crucial to developing stronger ties across stages of scholarship. And a big thank you to Nimi, Aditya, and Vignesh for coordinating this. Nimi is here, Aditya, and Vignesh. Also, a big thank you to Richard Anderson, Ellen Zigura, Kentaro Toyama, and Aditeshwar Seth, if you can also just wave, for being mentors at the consortium. And I mean, they really devoted their whole day to this exercise, so it was no small feat. Also, in our effort to strengthen these ties at a more informal level, some of our organizers were involved in coordinating a reception for young researchers, that is today, so right after this talk. And thank you to Divya, Rama, and Vikram. If you can just, so Divya, Rama, Vikram. Next, we acknowledge that conversations that are relevant to the ICTD community frequently take place outside of this conference. And so we introduced a track for pre-published papers, that is papers published in other venues, ranging from HCI conferences to communication journals, that would allow us to bring these conversations to the conference. And thank you, David, for managing this process. Is David here? We also allowed for papers to be published without archival, again, to be inclusive. No one really asked for this option at this conference, but it was something that came up in feedback. We instituted remote participation this year as one of our registration options to ensure that those unable to attend for various reasons would be able to connect remotely. And Linus Kendall was our point person for this. Linus, there you go. And then we included an accessibility chair this year, though he could not make it to the conference for immigration-related issues, but part of this effort was to organize the visits to the Blind People's Association. We have our very first code of conduct linked from the website, thanks to Nitya and Melissa. They couldn't be here, but they did a really great job of putting this together. We also had an incredibly organized set of student volunteer chairs, constantly on top of things, as you might find, managing assignments across 21 volunteers. And this was Navina Karusala and Karthik Thad. That's Karthik. Where's Navina? Okay. All right, so in addition, the older, more standardized roles were fulfilled as follows. So you just met the general chairs, that's Rajesh and Pushpendra. And then Rajesh Veerakavan, who's going to be up here in a moment, he and I were program chairs. David and Ishtiaq were posters chairs. Ishtiaq couldn't join us. You already know David. And they did really a gigantic amount of work to also bring some of the papers, shorter papers that were accepted into posters. So that was not a small task. Aditya Vashish, Michael Andai, and Nitya Sambasivan did a nice job with the open sessions. Aditya and Nitya couldn't join us, but Michael Ann is here. And really, this has been involved responding to countless rescheduling requests and such. So, and they've really been on top of things. Curtis was our demos chair. Is Curtis here? Meg couldn't be here, but he did a lot of the hard work at the start to get the ball rolling on the registration front, and this was a non-trivial task. Jess Smith bravely picked up the burden and took charge. Is Jess Smith here? There you go. Karthik again, and Marisol, who's I think not here, completed the task of formatting all of our papers and posters for ECM. This took many, many, many hours. And this was really incredible, so thank you guys. And then Navina also put together a box for suggestions and forms for feedback. You'll see them at the registration desk, and what we were hoping was that when you have a moment, if you can fill out those forms for anything that comes to mind that you would like to bring into discussion at the town hall on Monday, that would be great. And finally, I really want to extend an extra special thank you to the travel, communications, and design teams. I honestly think that they have dealt with a number of challenges and really stayed committed throughout, following through, going above and beyond the call of duty. So thank you, Sriram, Anupriya, Deepika, Navina, and Esther, and then Shruti, all of you. And then one request that I wanted to also add is that we're going to send thank you cards to the organizers who put in a lot of work but couldn't make it, and so we're just going to put them at the registration desk. If you feel up to it, go ahead and sign. We're going to send them a small kit after the conference. Okay. Then we had 110 program committee members, too many to really list, but a number of you were part of the program committee. If you were, if you could please raise your hand. Thank you all for putting in hundreds of hours for the reviewing process. So again, program committee. And then these are the 21 students who you're going to see running around over the next few days in our conference t-shirts. Thank them for the effort that they're putting in. They're really the ones doing most of the running around. So these are the student volunteers. If you can just raise your hands. So organizing a conference in India is not overwhelmingly expensive, but flying to India from most parts of the world is, and we have a lot of us here who have received some support for that from all of these sponsors. So Google, Facebook, Microsoft Research, Center for Design and New Media, this is at IIIT Delhi, Vadvani AI, IPID, the Michigan School of Information, and NSF. They really gave us a lot of support to get many of you here. And finally, so on the back of your name tag, so this is the program, you'll see that you have the times indicated. So this is just to kind of give you an idea, and this is again thanks to Navina. This will give you an idea of when the open sessions are. So when you see a bunch of people, that's where the open sessions are. There's the projector, that's for the paper sessions. The keynotes are indicated by the podium. There's a Young Researchers Night, which you see at the bottom of Jan 4, and then the Research and Practice session at the end of Jan 5. There's a Town Hall in Jan 7, which looks like, I don't know what it looks like, but you can see. And what else? Yeah, the one thing I wanted to highlight, which hasn't actually gotten a lot of attention on the program and on the website, is the cultural evening that we have planned for Sunday night. And this is with Padma Shri recipient Prahlad Singh Tipania and his troupe. And I've known them for many years, and they really are amazing. And if you have any appreciation for music, poetry, spirituality, self-awareness, social justice, you will love it. It will not be in Hindi or in English, the music, but it will be translated. So you'll be able to follow along. Don't worry about that. So that's Sunday evening. Okay. We are here to engage mostly in person, but if you'd like to engage on the web or social media, then this is our website, which you've probably already seen. And I wanted to say that all of the updates that have been taking place after the program went into printing, they have been updated, again, thanks to Navina, and put on the website. So if you want to check which open session to go to, we would suggest that you look at the website, because some of the open sessions were canceled last minute because people couldn't get visas or they had some other emergencies and couldn't make it. So please check that before you commit to an open session. Among other things, we have a Facebook page. We're not using that very much, actually, because most of the activity has been on Twitter and on Slack. I understand that not all of you are eager to use Slack or to add Slack, but if you have intermediaries who can support your Slack activity, that would be great, because really all of the updates are kind of being added there. And we know how intermediated use works, right? So if you want to add yourself to Slack, just let me know, or let Navina know, let Anupriya know, and we can add you. Okay. So things to do today after this would be, so evening snacks at the Tower Lawns, I think. I'm not sure if we do actually have evening snacks, yes, after the talk. And then the Young Researchers Night in SR7, which is the room where the doctoral consortium was happening in New Campus. And then the DC posters, I think, are going to be up over the next day or so. So you can still kind of see what the doctoral consortium students presented. This is the map that you have in the program. Hopefully by now you've already figured it out. We have a bunch of things happening here, then we have a bunch of things happening in New Campus, where the open sessions were today. But the most important thing to remember is to have fun, and every minute of every day that you're here. And if you're not having fun, let one of us know, one of the organizers, and we will fix that for you. So with that, I come to the end of my little orientation session, and I'm going to ask Rajesh to come up and introduce. Oh, no, not yet. So Kentaro is, yeah. So Kentaro and then Dorothea are going to take a minute of your time, and then we'll have Rajesh come up. Thank you.
Okay, so quick, so I'll just start talking while they're setting up. Hi, my name is Kentaro Toyama. I'm a co-founder of this conference, and I've also been on the steering committee for the last 10 conferences. The steering committee has been very informal up until now, and we would like to change that after 10 successful conferences. And so the committee formed a ad hoc committee that is composed of 6 people, who I'll name in a moment, and then dissolved itself. So this ad hoc committee's role will be over the next year to try to formalize the governance structure for the conference in the future, to select the next ICTD host, and also to run the first elections for the formal board going forward. The one thing I would like to request from all of you is, if you have any feedback or input into this process, please provide it to us. The 3 members on the ad hoc committee who are here today are myself and Michael Best. Please raise your hand. And Dorothea Klein. She's also in the room. Here she is. And the 3 other members who are not able to make the conference are Janaki Srinivasan, Nitya Sambasivan, and Joseph Wafula. So you can also speak to any of them at any point over the next several months. There's also an email address that you can send comments to, ictdadhoc@gmail.com. ICTD ad hoc is one word, all lowercase. And you can also provide suggestions in the suggestion box that is at registration, or attend one of the 2 sessions. There is a session on January 6th on Sunday at noon that is titled the Gary Marsden Memorial Session. You could go to that, and we'll talk about the future of this conference and event and the community. There's also a town hall that you heard about at 11:30 on the last day, which you can also attend. So please do all of that. And then finally, if anybody is either interested in or potentially knows somebody who is interested in hosting the next event, please come speak to one of us as well. Thank you.
Okay, so just carrying on from that, my name's Andy Dearden, and I'm a software engineer by training.
I'm Dorothea Kleine, and I'm a development geographer.
And since we've been talking about the way that this conference has been maturing and the way that the interdisciplinary community and field is maturing, certain things begin to coalesce as fields mature, and one area is some agreement around the sort of ethical standards that we should be holding ourselves to. And over the last couple of conferences in 2016, in 2017, and also through a number of workshops within the community over that period, there's been a community-sourced process to develop a set of minimum ethical standards. And those are, well, Dorothea, those are now in there, having been revised, having been reviewed, they're sort of at the stage awaiting adoption.
So yes, so we did multiple iterations of this, and we wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who participated at ICTD Ann Arbor in a workshop, ICTD Lahore in a workshop, and then regional workshops and online. It was quite a sort of an ongoing, participatory, community-sourced, lengthy process, but we got there, and we've now got the standards in their multiple revised but now fixed form under a Creative Commons license under ictdethics.org. I'll repeat that multiple times, ictdethics.org. And this can now be used in our community. It can be used for research and for teaching. And what we wanted to do at this conference was to really invite the community to adopt these standards at the town hall meeting at the end of the conference, or towards the end of the conference. So this is Monday morning. And there we would like you to endorse these standards as a way of understanding ethical standards across different disciplines, and so that we can use these standards for reviewing, particularly also for this conference, but also disseminate them more widely. So in order to participate properly, you should have a look at those standards. It's ictdethics.org. You can also see a summary of them on the poster that we'll be presenting. You can come talk to us about them. And if you'd also like to find out how these standards fit with your everyday kind of work, we're running an ethics clinic tomorrow in the open session slot at 4:30, where we're going to do this again in participatory format, peer mentoring format, where you can find out how these might be relevant to your work. So thanks very much for listening, and we hope to see you at either the open session, or if not, then at the town hall meeting, and see what you think about those standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Rajesh Veeraraghavan. I am an assistant professor at Georgetown University. It's with great pleasure that I introduce Aruna Roy to you all and welcome her to ICTD and IIM. Aruna is one of India's most prominent activists and leader of several important social movements that, through their fight for making the constitutional right to equality and justice accessible to the poor, have significantly deepened, strengthened, and made Indian democracy more equitable. Aruna and the work of the MKSS, which I will share a brief history of in just a moment, has had a deep influence on me and my dissertation and my work, and many students like me, shaping our politics and intellectual trajectories in profound ways. So I'm particularly excited that she's been able to make the trip to Ahmedabad and be here with us today. After spending 7 years in the Indian Administrative Service between 1968 and 1975, Aruna resigned and moved to the northwestern Indian state of Rajasthan to work with the rural poor. Along with Nikhil Dey and Shankar Singh, stalwarts of the RTI, or the Right to Information movement, and several others from the local community in Devdungri, a district in Rajasthan, in 1990, she collectively formed the MKSS, or the Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, which roughly translates to Organization for the Empowerment of Workers and Peasants. The initial work of the MKSS sought to directly address issues of survival of the rural poor by strengthening participatory democratic processes and to collectively fight exploitation in a highly caste-divided society. However, as the organization grew in strength and experience, its members began to see the links between their own local struggles and wider national and global struggles. The MKSS soon became involved in campaigns at a state and national level with an objective of helping these processes of participatory democracy spread and mature. The National Campaign for the People's Right to Information, or the NCPRI, which was born out of the MKSS struggles, is one such example. While fighting for the implementation of the legal right to minimum wage, the members of the MKSS realized that to enforce their economic rights and exercise democratic controls, they needed the right to access the documents which determined the granting or denial of the rights. From this emerged a nationwide campaign with the slogan, "The right to know, the right to live," which stressed that without the right to know, there can be no real right to exercise power and make the state machinery accountable to its people. The campaign itself drew its members from diverse social groups, including workers, peasants, retired judges, eminent journalists, and public intellectuals. The MKSS played a pivotal role in drafting and advocating for the Right to Information Law, which was finally passed by the Indian Parliament in 2005. It was the first national legislation in India which a campaign played a significant role, from enunciating the principles to drafting the law and overseeing it through Parliament. Studies have shown that an estimated 8 million people applicants seeking information under this law are filed every year. The other major legislation campaigned for was the MGNREGA, or the Employment Guarantee Act, which was also passed by the Parliament in 2005. The program has provided employment to 50 million households across rural India every year. This was also the outcome of the People's Campaign called People's Action for Employment Guarantee, in which Aruna played a key role. In the period between 2004 and 2014, several such rights-based legislations were passed, which marked a significant shift in the nature of the Indian welfare state, which one could argue now has some semblance of a social security system. It was during this time that new spaces and platforms for consultation and participation of civil society members in the pre-legislative process also opened up. I should also note that the legacy of some of these modes of engagement have continued, while some have been dismantled by the current government. The National Advisory Council, which was one such body set up to draft and monitor social policies. Aruna was a member of the NAC from 2004 to 2006 and 2010 to 2013, and played a crucial role in the passage of both the RTI and the NREGA from this position. She also was a member of the Advisory Committee to the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, CAG, the supreme audit institution in the country that has drafted the standards of participatory audit or the social audit within the overall audit process of the government. Aruna's membership in bodies like the NAC and CAG are examples of the strategic position that the MKSS takes as a non-party political organization which seeks to resist the distinction between state and non-state efforts. A document on the MKSS story states, the concept of the state being outside ourselves, we felt, had to be turned around. The state is ours, usurped by a ruling elite. This tacit theory of the state is what has guided MKS's activism and resonates in their iconic slogans such as Sarkar Hamari Aapki Nahi Kisi Ki Baap Ki. The state is ours, not the inheritance of a feudal few. And Hamara Paisa Hamara Hisab, our money, our accounts. In its multi-scale activism, the MKSS has used creative strategies of resistance and engagement to extend the welfare functions of the state, expand citizenship rights, and create what has been called an alternate public sphere for deliberation between citizens and state officials. Finally, Aruna was awarded the Raymond Magsaysay Award for Community Leadership in 2000 and was listed as one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Time magazine in 2011. The MKSS Collective has received many awards, including the Rule of Law Award in the World Justice Forum held in Barcelona in 2011, and has been a steering committee member of the Open Government Partnership of the OGP, an international platform which aims to secure concrete commitments from governments to promote transparency, empower citizens, fight corruption, and harness new technologies to strengthen governance. I'll end here and let Aruna give us a much richer account of development and politics in Indian democracy. With that, Aruna, please welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege, but everyone can't be as tall as Neha. So I'll have to shift. Every podium in India is 6 feet tall, and I'm only 5'2". So I have to shift, because I can hardly see my own nose, let alone your face. And since I'm a communicator, without looking at your faces, I can't talk. Having come here with a lot of trepidation, because I'm not really a technologist, nor am I somebody from your world. I wondered what I would do here, but I think we all part of the same fabric of society which wants to make things better. I'm also a member of your class, and I say that very clearly, because where I live today, I don't live with members of my class. We speak a different language, we live a different life, and we see a different politics and a completely different technology. So what we see in middle class India doesn't quite exist in most of rural India. And when it does exist, it's exploitative. So when we first went to rural India, everybody thought that we had come to exploit, because nobody really comes to do anything good there. And if you're literate, you're worse, because you have multiple ways of exploiting people, which an illiterate person doesn't have. So they asked us, have you come here to mine? Are you going to really look for marble or stone? Because that's what Rajasthan has in plenty. Are you going to deal with liquor? I mean, why are you here? And why should you live in this mud hut? Can we just see that place, please? Can you just project that? Thank you. So why should you live in this mud hut? Are you out of your senses? Why have you left your comfortable homes and come to live in this house? That house that you see, the place from which the technology of the RTI and the MGNRG actually emerged. And our consultations that took place were in this house. It's really quite a wonderful place, because we met there and we talked, and because it was so disarming and did not intimidate anybody, people came to talk. You must understand too that places are very frightening. If you want to enter the planning commission that was, or the Niti Aayog that is, which are the places where policy is made, people are worried, because you're stopped at 10 different places, you're asked to show your identities, you want to know why the hell you're going in there, whom do you want to meet. You need to have an open space where you can just walk in and talk and say what you like. So the two aspects to beginning the real technology of development of politics and of using technology is to listen to people. And this is something Mahatma Gandhi had said years ago when he went on this tremendous journey all over India before he really began his politics. And he said, if you don't listen to people, you don't know what they want, you'll never really deliver. And I think some of his extraordinary strategies, like the famous Salt March, which began from Ahmedabad, from Sabarmati, was phenomenal. And all that he had with them were 67 people who marched, began the march with him, and he toppled the British government and he made them go back. And with the Salt March, which is such a significant thing. So it's not the smallness of it that matters, it's the principle that matters. It's the principle that you catch, hold, and elaborate on that really matters. And I think by a series of accidents maybe just that we listened carefully, or that we had come together at a particular point in the history of India at a time when there were crises and there was space and we were in a state which was not politically mature, which didn't kill us immediately. We asked for information but gave us time to survive then so that we could talk. If we had asked for information in Bihar or in UP, which are two other states in India, we might very well have been killed. So the question is that these issues that come up are not really only because of us. It's because of an intersection of time, of history, of accidents, of thought, of research, of understanding, of listening, and the coming together. But the thing that you and I need to do is to recognize that it's now that you strike. And that recognition that it's happening today and we must strike, I must grant to those wonderful people who are faceless in India, whom we don't see, who are not given awards, who never can be seen on television, national television, ordinary Indians, magnificent people with wonderful common sense and such tenacity of purpose and so much staying power. Because it took us 11 years to get the right to information law, and we sat for almost 9 months in the year on strikes, what we call dharnas in India, sit-down strikes, in various parts of Rajasthan and then in northern India, in southern India, also in various other parts of this country, sitting on the roadside and demanding that we should be allowed to see government records because they were relevant to us, and without that there can be no democracy. The British hid everything. They had a law called the Official Secrets Act. And they left it in every country they ruled, so anything you wanted to see was hidden. So how do you fight a law? How do you get the information out? And for us, that was fantastic technology. The technology of a very simple thing, and Mohanji, who was one of our Dalit leaders, and let's understand one thing for my friends who don't live in this country or don't belong here, we have something pernicious called a caste system. You're born into it, regardless. There is no mobility. You cannot move out of it. It's a stigma. It's on your face, on your forehead, in your name, in your language, in your demeanor, in your access, in your privilege. So how do you get out of the caste system? How do you get beyond it? Let me tell you that almost a third of the people who fought for the right to information were people called Dalits, who are a lower caste. 60% were women, who are, because of gender, in any case, a subcaste of people who don't have access. It was also people, mainly many people who were illiterate, but who were wise, knowledgeable, and understood politics. So let's understand that the technology of governance, the technology of politics, the technology of wisdom and ethics is not linked either to literacy or to machines. The machine is what? The machine can be used anyhow, whichever way you like. As they say very often, you can use a knife to kill, you can use a knife to cut. You can use a knife for better or for worse. So, but the technology of it is there. But the use of that technology for the good of all people, or the use of that technology, lies ensconced in a socio-political economic structure. And anyone who says that politics is not involved with economics, or economics is not involved with the social structures, the technology is independent of it, I don't believe it. Technology is rooted in a socio-political economic structure. Depends on who uses it. And I'll come to a little bit of what has happened lately. But I live with people who tell stories, and I love them. I have the great privilege of listening to wonderful stories, and I live with people who tell stories, and I think very often I end up telling stories. So I'll bring one very great favorite story of mine in, which is not really an Indian story. It's about Mullah Nasruddin, this great Sufi saint, whose stories haunt the corridors of the poor from Turkestan, which is Turkey, to Hindustan, which is India. We all know the stories of Mullah Nasruddin. There is this beautiful story about the mullah, that the mullah was looking for his key. They're hunting in his courtyard. He was there all morning, and his neighbor was very perturbed by it. He said, Mullah, what have you lost? He said, I've lost my key. So neighbor started hunting with him. After an hour of hunting and not finding the key, he asked him, where did you lose it, Mullah? He said, inside the house. So he said, but why are you hunting outside? He said, because there's more light. So that's what technology and policy does. Policy and technology goes where there is light. But the darkness has to speak. And I think the rights-based laws that came out of the Indian people and the Indian conscience from 2005 to 2013 were people who spoke from the dark, who lighted the candles that lit their lives and thereby lit the lives of many Indians, who found the key where they had lost it. They didn't look for the key outside. So all solutions, technological solutions, other solutions, come from an understanding of India which is seen from outside. I'll do this for you. What am I going to do for myself? How do I know what will work? How do I know what will not work? So I'll go quickly through a few examples. One of the best MISs we have in this country is the Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India, which deals with the, how many million did you say, Rajesh? 19 million? 19 million households in India who work on this 100 days work program, guaranteed work program in this country called the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act and Scheme. They are there on that website. Massive achievement. And it's the best use of the right to information law in this country of Section 4. Magnificent, because it means proactive disclosure. Now look at what's happened to that. You can go there, wherever you are in the world, you can click and find out the name of a state, the name of the district, the name of the village block, the particular name of the village panchayat, the name of the householder, and you can find out how many days he or she worked and how much money they got paid. Because the law guarantees 100 days work on certain wages prescribed by the government for every rural household. It's wonderful. And many great stories have emerged from people accessing that information and fighting for political rights, fighting against corruption in the village, and even facing death, facing violence, but fighting for their rights. So there are tremendous stories. But not everybody in this country can go and look at an MIS. We don't have access, there are no computers, there is no access to, the electricity is not there all the time, then they have no connection. So the solution was, we said to the government of Rajasthan, which subsequently the government of India accepted, that you get the information out of the MIS and paint it on the walls of the local village council. I don't know, Gujarat should also have it. So maybe you will be able to see it. But Gujarat is Gujarat. So I don't know whether it has it. But in the rest of India, you will find these yellow walls with hundreds of names. So if I'm an illiterate woman and I can't access the MIS, my son, my daughter-in-law, my son-in-law who can read can look at this MIS, what we call the Janta Information System, the JIS. On the walls, Janta means people in Hindi. So Janta means people's information system on the walls, and you can go and see who's been working, for how many days they worked, who has been cheated. Then of course, if somebody, my neighbor's name is there and he's cheated, all hell breaks loose, because we know he's never been there. How has he got the money? So ethics that we all talk about, and you're going to have something on ethics tomorrow. I won't be here because I'm leaving directly after this. But ethics is a very, very contested site. It's not easy. And rural ethics, or actually ethics of cheating, is very difficult to deal with. Because you have quarrels between neighbors, quarrels within families, quarrels within a caste. You have quarrels between the system, which is always more powerful, and the poor. You have quarrels between one village and the next. And these contested areas have to be solved. These contested areas have to be dealt with. The issues have to be solved. Corruption has to be identified, and ethics has to prevail. So technology is required. But what should the technology be? Who decides what the technology would be? Ultimately, democracy is about who decides. Ultimately, participatory democracy is about who takes the final decision, the final call. Because in these cases, as I go back to the Mullah Nasruddin story, people who lived in the dark decided what they wanted and how they wanted it. Many of these things have worked as much as they could. There are still blocks. Now the MGNREGA is in a terrible state. Yesterday, many of us, again the People's Action for Employment Guarantee, had a meeting with parliamentarians to ask why money has been stopped from New Delhi to flow into the coffers of the various state governments. There are problems, but the point is, even the villager in Rajasthan knows how to ask the right question today. If money doesn't come, they don't anymore blame just the headman in the village. They don't anymore think it's because of themselves. They will ask, what's happening in Delhi? Why isn't Delhi releasing the money? So for that expanse of understanding, of democratic understanding and political understanding, from the village to Delhi is a giant quantum leap. I don't know if you understand it. Many educated, literate Indians don't understand this. But our villagers who have participated in these various programs of accessing rights understand that the technology of power, the technology of sharing, the technology of demand for equality demands that you know how much money is there for you, how much money has come, how much money is not flowing, and why not. In India, and I think it's most countries, we do not allow questioning. Questions are disallowed. Socially disallowed, disallowed in power structures, disallowed in business, disallowed, because I don't think business is out of this. And I don't know how much is allowed in academics. So question and you're in trouble. So the right to information law legitimized questioning in this country. In feudal India, with its various caste structures, with its various divisions, with its classes and everything else, it gave legitimacy to questioning. And I think it's the basic technology of modernization, of existence, of knowledge, of learning, even of spiritual learning. Everything begins with a question. These questions have to get legitimacy. And I think the technology of questioning with legitimacy was what was established by the Right to Information campaign in India, and which is one enormous thing. And I remember, I'm not going to sing, don't get worried, but I'll quote from a song. A friend of mine composed, illiterate, Dalit friend, and he wrote the song and he said, may I first say it in Hindi, because it's so much more powerful. It's written actually in Rajasthani, but I'll translate it into Hindi. We were struggling with conveying the idea of power, how much information is really power, and how power lies in those records and documents. Many people did understand, but how do you access those documents? How do you get them out of the panchayat? So Mohanji sang, he said, "Pehle wale chor जंगलों में रहते थे, आजकल के चोर तो बंगले में रहते हैं राज चोरों का." सीधा पता लग गया, जंगल वाले तो आज बंगले में घुस गए. Then he said, पहले वाले चोर भाई बंदूक से मारता था, आजकल का चोर तो कलम से मारता है राज चोरों का. So immediately they understood that the pen and the use of the pen for cheating and for really disempowering you is really something we should fight against, and those records are vital. And it was he who said, sitting in this house, that unless the records come out, we'll be forever thieves. Because the government will say we've cheated, government will say we haven't worked, government will say we haven't done that, and they will vilify us. He said, the song says that The dacoits of the past lived in the jungle. The dacoits of today live in bungalows. That's where all the money goes, all the money that we are cheated of, and all the corruption is a huge issue in India anyway. And the second thing he said was that the dacoits of yore used to shoot us with a gun. The dacoits of today kill us with a pen. So all the cheating that takes place now takes place through checks, through writings, through minutes, through all of that happens on pages and paper. So the issue was, when we faced all this, what do we do? So we went with 4 demands to the Panchayat. And we said to the Panchayat, you will have to put outside on your public display all your accounts. You will have to tell us exactly how much money came and where it was spent. You will also have to show whether it was actually built or not. You will also have to do, if it fails, a public audit, where we will bear evidence to the fact as to whether such a thing exists or doesn't exist. And from that emerged one of the most important technological tools of governance that's now being used, which is called social audit or public audit, which has gone into all government functioning, which has gone into the law, which is the MGNREGA law, which has been accepted by this Comptroller and Auditor General of India as a very important part of ascertaining whether money goes in or not. The Supreme Court has just ordered in Delhi that the Delhi government will have to socially audit its various departments so that fraud and financial mismanagement can be checked. And all these ideas have come from a group of very ordinary citizens of India. So thought, wisdom, and the understanding of a kind of technology lies with people. If we understand that, and I believe you're all working, or that's what Rajesh said, many of you are working with groups in rural areas to see how technology can help actual conditions, not rural, maybe urban, people with issues. But I think technology can be malevolent, technology can be killing, and I'm using technology in a very limited sense. I'm talking of the machine, which is called the computer. I'm talking of the phone, which can take photographs of you and send it everywhere. I'm talking of the social media, which can spread fake news and make you kill. I'm talking about a range of misuse of media. That's now what we are fighting against in India, because we don't know how to stop the kind of hate and the kind of misinformation that's spreading through social media today. It's one of the big issues for all of us, is to deal with it. But if you look at one of the most horrific things that's happened to us in the recent past, and I was a very low, we were very few people who were struggling against this, but now we have quite a larger population identifying with it, was the use of this unique identification device, this number, to put on our foreheads like stigmatized individuals. So we all have a number, and we have a card called the Aadhaar card. We said right then, we objected. I still don't have an Aadhaar card. I don't know how long I can survive without it. But the Aadhaar card and the Aadhaar number is what? Every single individual in India has a number, and in that number we get a card. And the only thing, identification is biometric identification. So, if you do not have fingerprints, I don't have fingerprints, by the way. I'm 70 plus. I don't have fingerprints. My friends in the village who work as they do hard work like laborers, break stones, don't have fingerprints. With the result, in the state of Rajasthan, out of 1 crore, which is 10 million, 1 crore is 10 million? Yes? So out of 10 million people who needed to get their food rations, 25% did not get it because their fingerprints didn't work, or the machine didn't work, or because there was no electricity. And these 25% people are on the edge of starvation. And we're talking about the digital divide. This is the real digital divide. Because you cannot understand how technology can be a total solution to everything. It can't. So there has to be an understanding of the socio-political economic realities of a country, of a people, of the situation before we go in headlong into solutions, and nothing, but nothing can stop corruption. Unless there is political intent to stop corruption, unless there is bureaucratic constraint and public accountability of the bureaucrat to stop corruption, there will be corruption. Despite the Aadhaar, we have so much corruption taking place. The Aadhaar cards are all with somebody who's the local moneylender who has control, the local shopkeeper who has control, and I've heard stories that all kinds of fudged fingerprints are put there, money is lifted, so the only way you can really deal with corruption is not through technology as the master, technology as a servant. Technology is a very, very good servant and a lousy monster of a master. If we make technology, that is, I'm not talking of us, but I'm talking of the machine. The machine becomes our master, then we are done for. So why and when do we stop? And where and how do we use it? Because I also use technology. Many people call me a techie grandmother. I'm not a grandmother, by the way. I have no kids or grandkids. But they call me a techie grandmother because I have white hair. And people are shocked that I should know how to use a computer, how to use this. And very often when printers don't work, I can make them work. If something stops, I can make it work. So I'm not against technology. But I'm saying if we think technology is God, then there's something wrong with us, this kind of technology. Whereas I think technology is a word, if we go and look at its source in Greek, it doesn't mean only machines. It means much more than that. And I'm sure all of you have come to look at the larger meaning of technology rather than just the technology through the machines. But my dear friends, please guard us and guard yourselves against this malfunctioning technology becoming the master of our lives and then targeting people because they have the wrong ideology, they have the wrong religion, they have the wrong gender, and so you become persona non grata in a society, and we are enabling the centralization of this information in the hands of a few people, which is so dangerous and so not only but anti-democratic. For me, all the power that we got out of the RTI, the right to information, was the information came out of that centralized source and became accessible to even the small tea shop owner who could go and access information about the Prime Minister or the Chief Minister or the District Collector. Today, what we are doing is centralizing all this information into a source which is controlled by a few people who can then use it as they wish. And all of you who don't believe me just have to go and check your emails to see how many people are selling you all kinds of goods, how many people are selling you jobs. I get offers of jobs, which I don't want. And also offers of other kinds of things which are beyond me now anyway. So all this has happened because my email ID has been sold, my identity has been sold, my preferences have been sold by Google to somebody. If we think that the internet is liberating, I've heard, not myself, I've heard people in the US, people in Austria, talk about how this whole cyberspace has got one gate. And there's a gatekeeper there. I'm using my local language. And that gatekeeper decides who gets into that cyberspace and who operates that cyberspace. And that cyberspace is then controlled, and then there is complete monopoly. I heard massive arguments between a PhD researcher from Harvard and a lawyer in Austria arguing against this complete misuse of monopoly. So when we talk about technology, I think we must at the same time look at the precautions we have to take to prevent its takeover, and the best answer are the people. The people at the cutting edge, the grassroots as you call them, People who live, who don't care a damn about what's going to happen to their computers or their iPads or iPhones or phones or whatever. People who understand the grim reality of existence, who understand hunger, who understand poverty, who understand discrimination and segregation and targeting. People who know what it is to live at that level are finally the wisest people to decide, the people with the best common sense to decide what the future of technology should be. Actually, some very, very basic questions. Who designed the technology? Who owns the technology? Who operates the technology? Questions I would ask today. I was quite illiterate, by the way. 10 years ago, I didn't know what questions to ask. It's because of people who have associated with us who are good at technology that I know what questions I must ask. That is in education. The first thing is to get educated for what I should be looking for. Where will I look for the right answers or the wrong answers? So really we must understand that it is this battle that is the raging battle for us today. And these rights-based laws have really today given us breathing space because it wrenched from the state the basic rights guaranteed to us by the Constitution of India, which was the right to equality, the right to liberty, the right to fraternity, the right to equity. And we sing songs where we say, after 70 years of independence, we are still asking for what? Food, for shelter, for housing, for medicines, for schools. These are very basic things. So 70 years then, we are still asking for it. In India, there are two Indias. There's the one India which is blazoning forth, and the other India which has regressed. And actually, I'm going to a conference after this organized by one of your Ivy League colleges whose alumni is meeting in Jaipur about the two Indias. Why on the one hand we are blazoning forth, and on the other hand we are now facing worse statistics than Bangladesh and Pakistan on all various, any indicator you'd like to see. For every 1,000 women in my state, men in my state, there are only 59 women. Only. So if you look at any kind of indicator you take, and we are falling below. So I think it's time we asked ourselves the right questions, and I hope we'll all help us in discovering how to ask those questions, facilitate our asking those questions, and also understand that the oral tradition, the communication techniques where you can interact are so much more important. In fact, I asked Rajesh if I could begin my talk with you by asking you to ask me questions rather than tell you what I wanted to say. I'm willing to stop now and take some questions from you and then talk. In fact, I wanted to reverse the whole process. So if you're ready, I'm ready. I'm unorthodox, I'm unconventional, I have no standards to live up to, except my own standards of being a good ethical human being. So I don't mind changing any pattern. Would you like to ask me questions before I go further ahead and conclude what I have to say? If I haven't been answering what you wanted to hear.
So one question is, in the ICTD community here, there's been a shift. There's, the initial days of exuberance in terms of an arrogance of what technology could do, to a state where I think largely we've kind of moved away from the technology determinism, and we've reached a stage where we realize that, or at least many of us realize that we have to work with existing groups that are already on the field, and the current model of work largely is some engagement in the field, maybe a couple of weeks, or maybe a little bit more, depending upon the type of the time that one has, and write a paper or two about the work. So I'm kind of I just want to kind of see, given the full-time jobs that most people have in teaching or in other places, the actual engagement with communities is very minimal. So I'm curious to see what your thoughts are about where we are and how to kind of think about the next phase of work.
Well, the thing that I have learned is that there is no substitute for the way people talk and share their information. So there's a huge subaltern culture in this country in which people talk through stories, people talk informally, people will tell you the truth when you sit with them in a certain kind of platform, but at other levels they will not talk to you. I think if you don't understand what there is, you can't resolve it. So the first thing is to understand what the real problems are. And of course, today in this country, contemporary India, you have a hell of a lot of state ire against people like me, who were called activists. And many of us are in jail, as you know already, and many of us are being targeted because they see us as the amplifiers of the voices of the people. And therefore they think that we are, well, they have lots of labels. The latest is that we are called urban Nakshals. Now, what is a Nakshal and what is urban? I think I like extreme left groups. So we are called urban Nakshals and damned today. So if we amplify the voices of people. So I think the real task today is to give them a platform to speak where people can actually hear them. And I think that's extremely important today, that people hear their voices. Because they don't say anything different from what we all say. Only thing is we change the idiom because we think people can't understand their idiom, so we may change the idiom a bit. But the gist of what they say is absolutely the same. And I think all the world over, it's not only in India, because I have recently been teaching, so I taught in McGill for a term, and I taught in CEU for a term, and I met people from all over the world with a very strong subaltern culture, and I found that it's the same. Because our voices don't reach. Our voices are killed even before they reach the local Mufassal town. And those of us who amplify have a huge job ahead of us. So I think amplifying their voices is critical. If you can do something to amplify their voices, not ours, it'll be a huge step forward in strengthening democracy, strengthening access to rights, strengthening critique of governance, critique of government tools that they use, and understanding that this comes from a genuine desire to work the system. It doesn't come from a desire to break the system. And of course, I won't go into it, but the state and government are two separate things. The state, we can't be anti the state. We all believe in the Indian Constitution, we believe in all of that, but we can be anti any government that comes. Why not? The government is just elected to power for every 5 years. We can disagree or agree with the government. It's calling us anti-state when we say that nutrition is not reaching, food is not reaching, that there is violence against those people, simply doesn't hold for me. So I think one of the most important things is to amplify their voice. And I think there the oral culture, there the culture of stories and storytelling and listening and recording those would be of immense value.
Can I ask? Yeah.
Well, may I begin with a question? How many Indians who are in the audience have looked at the Indian Constitution seriously? That's why there's the School for Democracy. Because we don't even know what the Constitution says. And then one political party appears out of the blue and says, change the Constitution. And everybody says, damn the Constitution. They don't know what the Constitution says. They don't know the history of the Constitution. Somebody comes and says, 5 people made the Constitution and they were elite Indians. They didn't care a damn. That must be banned. instead of understanding that I think 200 and how many people sat in the Constituent Assembly? 268 people or 35 people or whatever. And they debated endlessly, and those papers are on record. You can, every single article of the Indian Constitution was debated. Just because the original frame came from abroad, you can't damn it. You have to understand that every single article was debated upon and put in there. I ask you, the IIM stands because of the Indian Constitution. If there was no Indian Constitution, there would be no IIM. There would be nothing. Everything we do in this country emanates from. There would be no elections. There would be no electoral systems. There would be no panchayats. So that's at what level we need to educate ourselves. But anyway, that's not the only thing that the School for Democracy does. We also talk about other things. But basically, it's there to make people understand that the constitutional framework has at least to be understood, to be operated by people who live an unequal life.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for a wonderful talk. I wanted to ask you about, you briefly talked about ethics, and this is a topic that actually perpetually confuses me because my own experiences on the ground while I work in villages in India tells me that there certainly is a difference in how a typical rural Indian perceives ethics. But, I mean, ethics is a very broad umbrella perhaps, but say for example, if you look at privacy, and to me, a very good national example of how a typical rural Indian looks at privacy is the example that you just gave, where in Narega, all the data is put up publicly, and I can go and look at anybody's number of days worked, the amount of money that the person is eligible to and was disseminated to, and so on. To me, this is equivalent to, I mean, we have net banking. I can go and look at anybody's net banking account and tell, see for myself how much money was made by whom in this country. So, I mean, conceptually it is similar. It's not significantly different from that concept. But that concept is, in a sense, completely alien to what I hear or understand about privacy, particularly coming from the Western notions of privacy. So people from India, the people who stay in this dark room that you showed, don't mind a lot of their private information to be in public. On the other hand, this would not be a very acceptable notion of privacy. So what is how do you resolve this, or do you try to square this circle in some way?
I have a good friend in the audience who's just come in, and I think she should also speak about privacy, Ritika Khera, who has been a comrade in arms through many years for all these struggles and fights, but who's now an academic and teaches in the IIM. I would like her to do the first take, and then I'll add to it. Ritika, would you like to say something?
Thank you. Sorry to gate crash like this. So I think this understanding of privacy is a very deep debate. First of all, privacy has many dimensions, and the dimension that you're talking about is sort of so because I have now, if 7 years ago, I work on Aadhaar, and this is why I got involved in this debate. And if 7 years ago somebody had asked me about privacy, I would have said something like what Shekhar Gupta said on Twitter, that, these are just elite people who are just Twitterati, blah, blah, blah. But the Aadhaar, being involved in the Aadhaar debate from the welfare angle forced me to also think about the other dimensions that other people were talking about. And I think that's when I started engaging. So I think this informational privacy is something that maybe people are not aware of the implications, and that's why they, at the moment, think about it the way they do. That's one part. The second is that there is a genuine tension between privacy and the right to privacy and the right to transparency. And I think that is something, it's a difficult, hard question which one must think about rather than trivializing one or the other. Because the tendency is to say, the Right to Information activists say, not all of them, I should clarify. Some of them are so committed to the right to information and transparency that they don't want to engage with the privacy question. But I don't think that's, we have to understand this is a hard question and we have to think hard about it, not say, privacy doesn't matter or right to information doesn't matter. Both of them have their domains of. And then the privacy thing also, one is this personal privacy, which I think even rural people value, and they may not have the language to articulate it. There may not be a word in Hindi for, or Hindi or Tamil or whatever for privacy, but that doesn't necessarily mean, because I'm saying that specifically because that was one of the things that was said in the Aadhaar debate. Oh, there isn't even a word in Gujarati for privacy, and so that means it doesn't matter. That I don't think it's like that. If people in rural areas, poor people, whatever it is, if they didn't value privacy, then they wouldn't have doors, they wouldn't put locks on their doors, they wouldn't draw these boundaries. So it's a very complex issue. I'm not the first one to say this. There's very deep and insightful literature, both from people working in computer science. So there's a computer scientist called Arvind Narayanan at Princeton who has been thinking very hard about questions of privacy, big data, ethics. There's Bruce Schneier, who's been there for many, many years. And in the field of law, there's a scholar called Daniel Solov, and I think I'm pronouncing his name right, but his work is definitely worth reading because he has been thinking about these issues, about databases and privacy since the 1990s. So I'll stop with that.
I think, the first thing I would say, I agree with much of what Ritika has said, I have no quarrel. And I think the right to information law also provides for privacy. It's not as if everything is out in the open. There are restrictions on many things, like medical records. Like so many things are restricted. But I'm going to say, why don't we engage with people in conversation, which brings me to one of the issues I have not touched upon, which is we have insisted that every single law in discussion should be out in the public domain. No law should be passed in Parliament unless it's publicly debated. Because much of these laws impact all our lives. So we need to understand what Parliament is doing, which laws are in Parliament. Again, I'm going to ask you a question. How many laws are there in Parliament, in the Indian Parliament, that will affect us? How many of us know? We don't know. We don't even take an interest in what's happening in our, because that's going to finish us off. Like this finance bill when it came, and before we knew what had happened, the bill was passed, and so many horrendous things had happened, we didn't even know. So I think, and how many of us know that there is these electoral bonds? The horrible law that's been passed about the electoral bonds, the Indian political parties can receive foreign funding and not disclose it. Which means that our government can be run completely and totally by foreign investment. And in India, there's an ordinary saying, whoever pays, controls. So those who pay the politicians to win will control the policy, will control how the government runs. And where is the notion of the welfare state? Where is the notion of rights? Where is the constitution? So in a sense, if we are not aware of what's happening in Parliament, no matter how much we may work on the other ends, everything's gone. So in a sense, even literate Indians, I don't think I make a big distinction between education and literacy. I think I'm highly literate. Whether I'm educated, I don't know. But educated Indians, when we educate ourselves about democracy, have to take an interest in public affairs. If we don't take an interest in public affairs, we give up our rights. And I think this has happened instead of the glamorized television shows that we have in this country. I don't know if any of my foreign friends have ever watched the ghastly shows we sometimes have on Indian TV, but my Indian friends know. where we are constantly attacking each other like birds of prey. We should really be discussing what kind of laws are being made which impacts people, what kind of controls, so that we as Indian citizens can fight for a better democracy. And it's true in every country. I've watched some of the US television programs, and I don't think they're very much better either. So I saw them, and I thought, well, might be the British or whoever. I saw some Hungarian television shows which were also quite like that. Because they don't educate the people about what is really relevant to them. So I think we need to make a huge take on some kind of use of technology to project these things on the website or on the internet, so that people can see what, if somebody wants to know about what's going to impact their lives, they can just click a button and go somewhere and see what's going to happen to them. Today, that kind of information is not readily available on the internet. And many people in this country today are interested. That's the good side of technology and television and so on, that many people in India now know something of what's happening. They may not know everything, but the television has penetrated a great deal of rural India, so they hear the news. So they don't have to see Arnab Goswami every day. They can see something better. Poor Arnab, I mean, I think he must be hiccuping like mad. So, in any case, so like that, development can be also defined in multiple ways. And we must concede that there is no one perspective on development, and development is also shaped by ideology. Economics is shaped by ideology. Positions we have are shaped by ideology. I am a political animal. I don't belong to any political party. But every decision of mine as a feminist is political. Whether I dye my hair or don't dye my hair, whether I wear a cotton sari or a polyester sari, whether I wear a sari or don't wear a sari, is a political statement. And I think if we understand it like that, then politics is everybody's business. And democracy, of course, is everybody's business. So if democracy and politics is everybody's business, how will technology help us make informed, correct choices? Let us go further in our quest, and we have to see how it can do it. It can be done in multiple ways. It can be done in different ways. So if it is the 6 to 8 million RTI users, or the 19 million NREGA households, or the millions of people who access food in this country, who need to get their voices heard, how do they get it heard? Thank you very much. I think I'll miss my flight if I don't stop now.
And I think keep the questions coming. Aruna was really serious about using technology. So if you have any thoughts on it, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll pass on to her. Thank you again. And Neha, do you have?
I think. So after this, there's a break, as I mentioned, for half an hour, and then there's a Young Researchers night. I think that we're running a bit late. The Young Researchers event, where are it's 6:25. It's supposed to start at 6:30. Maybe it'll start about 6:40, 45, but you can make your way there. It's in SR7 in New Campus. Thank you.